off-plan project is another ways where you can finance your project. So how does off-plan work? I mean, some of us have heard of this before, and probably you have even utilized it. It has its own advantage, it has its own disadvantage. However, I always recommend off-plan to be mixed with other forms of financing. For instance, now, let's say you are doing a project of 12 units of apartment, and you have your personal finance. Off-plan can be one of the ways you can augment your personal finance and you can still achieve that project. Let's say, for instance, the project hypothetically is going to cost you 100 million naira, for instance. So you have 10%, 10 million naira. You're using 10 million naira to start the project and you are raising off-takers. So the off-takers are paying you as the project is ongoing. But the beauty of off-plan is to get enough off-takers as the project is getting started. So that's the beauty of off-plans. Off-plan is very, very, very powerful. It has its own advantage, it has its own disadvantage. Advantage to you as a developer is the fact that you have raised all the off-takers that you need and you can be assured that this project is going to be delivered on time. However, the advantage is also to the people that are buying, because they are buying it almost at a cheap because it's still under construction. It's actually a good way for you to raise funds because the fund that you are raising does not come with any promise of return, ROI of any kind. So off-plan is a very powerful way to raise funds. I hope you can explore it. It has its own disadvantage, like I said, and it has its own advantage. Make your research very well before you dabble into off-plan projects. Number 9, angel investor, venture capitalist, or hedge fund. So these are all the ways you can raise funds. If you're looking at it for investors, you can look at angel investors. These are individual HNIs. These are guys that have billions. They have representatives that can broker the deals. Our venture capitalists are corporate investors, people that they are corporate investors that are basically looking at real estate. Some are focused on agri, some are focused on mass housing, smart home, and all of those things. And they are hedge fund company, depending on the state of your company, actually, because most of these guys will look at your book, they'll scrutinize your book, and some of them might even want you to collateralize the fund that they are giving to you. So it depends. And at some point in time, you need expert finance person to guide you, and you need a legal, the legal people input too. Your lawyer, your solicitors. You need their input to guide you where you are accessing this fund, so that you will not sign your destiny away. Okay, so but they are because these funds are usually readily available, and one of the things you can use their fund to do is to store up materials. Basically, what you have done is that increase in cost, foreign currency risk, you've been able to hedge against it because you have all the material and you can just keep building and keep building. So these are some of the advantages when you have such HNI fund, angel investors bringing funds into your project. Number 10, you can go to the capital market and the money market to raise funds. Yes, you can do that. So there are platforms that can help you go to the money market and the capital market to raise funds. Some of these funds are short-term, some of them are long-term. So you need a professional to guide you. It's one of the ways you can raise funds. You can raise huge funds too. And most of these funds are usually short-term because there's really no patient capital out there. So you can look into that. You can, of course, get a broker to guide you. How can I have access to some of these funds? And they will look at your books. You will need a professional to put your books in good order because that is very, very important. Anytime you're accessing public fund, the public too want to know what your books are saying. So you can't afford to doctor books. You can't afford not to do the right thing because now you're accessing the public fund. So next, joint venture. A lot of people don't know that this is another good way to finance your project. Joint venture can be a tripartite dimension. Number 1, somebody owns land. Number 2, a developer is coming with his expertise. And most often than not, this is where it stops. But there's a third party. Number 3 is the financier. So some people have fund, they want to go into real estate. They don't know where to source land. They don't know where to, the expertise to build, but they have the finance. You have the expertise to build because you're a developer. You know who has land. Bring these three together. You are the broker at the same time too, and you broker the deal. So somebody is financing it, somebody is dropping the land. So what this does is that it makes it easy for everybody. Number one, the person that is dropping the land still has equity and he still has assets. The person financing still has assets. You as a developer too, you still have assets, and everybody makes money. So it's a win-win thing, and it's a very, very smart way. However, it requires good network. You need to have a robust network to be able to fill all the other two positions, because most often than not, what happens is that someone has the money, but it does not have the connection for the expertise. Most of the time too, somebody has the land, but there's no funding. So to get these three to work together as one, it requires good network of individuals. So let's look at the next ways you can finance your project. Number 12, grants and subsidies. There are funds that are out there that are specially focused on mass housing, social housing. You need to make your research, and government subsidies and government grants too on housing are there. And there are some loan facility too that are more or less like grant, because in real estate, when you are getting access to single digits interest, that's subsidized funding already. So you can really look into that, and I believe it will help you a great deal. So number 13, traditional banking. Somebody might be wondering that I'm not going to mention that. Of course, I'm going to mention it. Traditional banking is another way you can access financing. Don't throw them away. It depends on the situation of the project you want to go into, or you can bring them on board when you are putting an hybrid form of financing together. So traditional banking like mortgage, commercial loan, construction loan, depending on the state of your project. Even though it's not advisable, especially in Nigeria, because of the high rate and because it's going to hit up your profit a whole lot. So it's usually not advisable, but it's still something that you can look into. So traditional banking is an option that you can actually look into. And it depends. You'll have probably done your math and you see that, okay, is this thing going to be profitable? Is it going to be profitable? Oh, and there are other smart ways you can access traditional banking loan, because it usually requires collateral, down payment, and all the rest like that. So if, for instance, you have probably access to a foreign loan, and you can bring it in, fix it, and leverage it to collect another loan at a much more cheaper amount. So that's another way you can actually leverage on the commercial, because the funds are actually available there. The banks have this money, trillions, sitting down in their balance sheet, but they are not giving it out. It's quite expensive, and it's usually short term. That's another disadvantage. It's usually short term, but real estate is a long term game. So let's look at the next one as we begin to round up. Number 14, one of the most popular way of raising funds in Nigeria right now is crowdfunding. Crowdfunding. Very good, easy to raise money. You promise return, you promise ROI, but you need to tread carefully. You need to tread carefully. The road to crowdfunding can be a very marshy ground. From experience, it might be easier for you to raise the fund, but paying it back can be crazy, because it's actually a type of financing that is called hard money, because it's short term, it's expensive. It's short term and it's expensive. That's why it's called hard money. So you need to tread carefully, because you are dealing with the public here. You cannot afford to disappoint them. So you need to tread carefully. So that is crowdfunding. So on the last note here is lease to own. So remember, lease to own is that type of finance? Yes, it's a very smart way And I've seen a lot of organizations do this, churches, religious organizations, NGO, they do this. And basically, let's say you have a project or a property, or for schools, let me even give an example of a school. I know of a school that wanted to use a property that is worth about 150 million naira. There was no way they could raise that kind of money at that very point in time. So what they did was that they signed a 5-year lease with the company that owned that same property with the option to buy. So it was more or less like a lease to buy arrangement. So within the 5 years of lease, they already started paying for that same property over on an installment basis. Very, very smart way to acquire property. What it invariably means is that whatever they are spending on that property during that lease period, they are, of course, it's not going to waste, because they are still going to be the owner of that property. So the same thing can apply for you as a developer, for you as a project owner. Probably you are doing a refurbishing. For instance, now I'm consulting for someone that is doing a refurbishing, and I told him, I said, see, guy, it's going to cost you a lot to do the refurbishing of this project. Why not do a lease to buy arrangement? Lease it for 3 years, and with the option to buy out in 2 years. So in total of 5 years, you will have paid these people off. And he sent a proposal to the people, and they bought into it. So he's currently renovating the project right now. So it is a very smart way to finance your project, so that you will not pump all the money you are supposed to be using to remodel the project. You pump it into buying the project, and at the same time, at the end of the day rather, you will have you won't have money to probably finance the remodeling or renovating of the project. So these are the few points. I hope it has made a lot of sense to you when you are thinking of financing your project. So my name still remains Okpe Oluwa Oni, your real estate cash flow king, and I'll catch you in the next video. That will be all for now. Thank you very much.